very good morning to start with to all of you, and congratulations to Amit. Edition number 6, and things have just gotten started. The first thing I want to start by kind of touching upon is that this audience to me is very interesting, very special as well. I see it as divided into three types of people. One is individuals and institutions that I already work with quite actively. You know who you are. Two is this very interesting group of people now whom I'm starting to call conference friends. The people I meet from one conference to another. And three is people who will hopefully be either one or the other soon enough. Now, what I have to speak and what I have to share with you today has nothing to do with Bloomberg per se. The only place where Bloomberg is relevant is that it has facilitated a lot of learning and a lot of exposure to me in my role as the person who manages our strategy for our relationships with the education space. So that's really about where Bloomberg comes in. We work with about 750 schools around the world, and of which in my role as the strategy head for the Asia-Pacific region, I work with about 150 of them. And so I will be sharing a lot of ideas, and it's probably a little presumptuous of me, probably a little naive to say that I might be able to share ideas with business schools who are technically in the business of teaching business persons business. Having said that, maybe a little naivete and a little presumption is what is required. Because, and this is something that we in the community have been discussing for a long time, there is a lot that has been changing. The ground beneath the MBA system has been shifting. And maybe there's some perspective that we could throw on a few implemented actual real life examples of what a few schools I've been lucky to meet and interact with are already doing in different parts of Asia. Because obviously a lot of the plans and business ideas that I will share with you in the course of the next 10 odd minutes are works in progress. I will not be sharing the names of the schools that are doing this, but there are schools in India and many more abroad that are actually doing some very interesting work, which is something that maybe all of you could think about, and if it could add some value into the way you think about the business of delivering business education. Now, the theme of this particular conference is enhancing competitiveness. And these are just competing with Bloomberg itself. So a few questions that I started to think about once again in my naivete was, Dr. Deepak Jain recently spoke about business schools putting performance over purpose. Dr. Jitendra Singh, I met with him in April at the Asian Management Conclave and then at the AAPBS conference in Bali recently as well. And he and I spoke a lot about the dichotomy of rigor versus relevance and what the purpose of a business school is, what is the school trying to achieve. And we've been speaking, I think, conference after conference about what Dr. Shrikant Datta said about having to rethink the MBA. So this is just my way of maybe suggesting an idea or two that is already in practice that maybe schools in India could think about, that there is immense potential with. So just a few things that guided my thoughts. One, some of these are obvious, so I will not dwell on the platitudes, but business schools should create business persons. We understand that. And maybe from the point of view of research, we have this dichotomy once again of practitioners versus academic researchers. Maybe there is a possibility that in the process of learning practice, practitioners themselves could evolve theory. And if that is something that we can facilitate for practitioners while they are in your protected confines of the business school, maybe there is opportunity to learn a lot more than was previously possible. The case study method is something that we've been using, motivated, driven perhaps by the Harvard model, the American model as it were. That is one kind of model that has evolved over time, and that's something that has become a standard practice for schools. I'm not saying that is wrong or right, but maybe, in fact, I had a very interesting conversation with the team from Harvard Business School as well, I mean Harvard Business Publishing as well. Vinay Haber, obviously all of you know. I don't know if he's in the room right now. But we spoke about also, for instance, cases that have present timeless business challenges and how they might adjust to the context of today. And what is it that we could do probably to bring the cases that have impacted businesses in history to how they might impact business today, because the reality around us for businesses has changed dramatically. And the reality also is reflected from MOOCs. Obviously, we've been talking about MOOCs conference after conference. I see an as big or a bigger challenge from Khan Academy. I mean, all of you are familiar with Khan Academy, and you've heard of, obviously, it's .org, my mistake there. Khan Academy has been looking at education in general in a very different, kind of dispersed kind of model, which is worth exploring. So I strongly urge you to. At this point, they only work with the basic sciences, math, etc. But how long before they start to look at management theory? ed.ted.com, so you know of the platform called ted.com, which is basically an idea sharing platform. A very interesting innovation they came up with was using YouTube videos and facilitating the teaching of lessons of all kinds based on simple YouTube videos where teachers could actually splice questions and ideas and discussion points into a video so that a student, when watching the video, can actually take quizzes, etc. And this could be any kind of video. So anywhere between the latest pop song perhaps to a MOOC course or a video that's put up on YouTube by one of the more eminent professors around the world could be used and repurposed to deliver specific messages as per the, the ideas the professors have. So if these are the kind of new models that are coming in, how does the, forgive me for saying this, the old guard adapt? So there's a few suggestions that I want to offer. And the last line here, it's an innocuous position, but this is what has been guiding my thinking. Before working with Bloomberg, I used to run my own corporate training company as well. In setting up a business, I think I've learned as much or more than what I believe a course of management has to offer. So that's another thought that I've always had is, we as human beings, and obviously you know better than I do, we live life as an emotional journey. Every single milestone in our life is defined by the emotion attached to it. Why then is academics all about the intellect and not about the emotional journey behind it? When I set up my own business, I learned a lot about business theory. I learned a lot about the various concepts we learn in class. But at the same time, I learned more about fear. I learned more about facing my own insecurities and dealing with them as I adapted to the challenges that I was through. In trying to, and at that time, I had no other option. I had no other safety net. I had to feed myself, and so I had to make my business run. And I'm saying, why then is there a big dichotomy when a student is learning business management? Is he not exposed to the emotions that a real business manager faces? Or even a real trader for that matter, who sits and invests some of his own capital in a stock, in an idea he believes in, and then sees how it performs or it doesn't perform. So that is what has kind of guided the way I thought about maybe disrupting our existing model. And this is something that I also fear, that if the world is changing every day and if media and technology are coming up with newer options for what the future of education might be, is it not time that instead of waiting for disruption to happen to the industry, which is something we've been talking about a lot, we disrupt ourselves? And maybe a certain amount of controlled disruption is required to the models that we currently know as business education. I'm not saying they need to be abandoned. There is a very strong hybrid possible between the existing models of business education with newer models that are evolving around the world. And especially schools that have spent so much time and energy investing in brand, in infrastructure, in the real material aspects of what it takes to build a school, to be able to use that and repurpose it in a way that has not been thought of previously. The other thing that I also find interesting is that entrepreneurship. Now, the speakers before me have actually done a lot of my job for me in feeding a certain amount of holy, righteous terror in the audience in terms of what the future might be and what the needs of the industry are. Entrepreneurship being treated as a separate subject, to my mind, is something that maybe needs to be rethought. Because entrepreneurship is not so much about a subject of study, but a mindset of approaching every single subject we study. So why then can we not work that into the way schools actually teach students any subject area? The warrior monk, this is just an idea I've been playing around with about whether we can see students who are trying to build an idea or a business being able to also evolve potential business theories through it. If maybe they're able to question existing models of what they are learning in class and come up with a possible alternative and back it up by research while they are setting up something of their own. And the bridge from relevance to rigor. I believe that relevance and rigor do not have to be a dichotomy. I believe that performance and purpose, as Dr. Jain said, do not have to be a dichotomy. They can all work together if perhaps we can rethink how we do this. And now a few existing models obviously that you are familiar with, and as I said, the speakers before me have shown you a lot of information about the number of types of delivery models that exist. Traditional programs where you have students who are full-time, you have executive education, etc. You have MOOCs and the whole online kind of space. from a funding model's point of view, endowments is an interesting thing. In India particularly, even entrance exams is a very interesting space for generating funding. But what about other opportunities which can merge the activity of learning with the opportunity to generate funds? And so from that point of view, I've looked at a few potential customer groups that are probably already being touched or could be touched, from where schools could actually look at a new model for generating revenue. The first one is the one I find closest to my heart, because my mother, after she retired, wanted to learn how to trade. I myself used to be a trader. My brother runs the commodities floor for a boutique firm in Mumbai, and yet we did not have the time or bandwidth to help her to learn how to trade. But that is something that she was scouring the websites of schools across India for, to see if there's an opportunity for her to learn. And my mother is just one of an entire generation of people who spend their life working and will retire soon or have retired already. Isn't that a market that maybe we could look at? Similarly, entrepreneurs, people who are self-employed, there are people looking for new skill sets. And a lot of schools are doing very admirable work in this space. I'm just going to maybe posit how this could be looked at very differently. Apart from your own students, obviously your students, most schools that are here right now are what I'd like to call the ambitious band of schools. Schools that are looking to do a lot more than they are currently, which is why you are here on a platform like this to share ideas. And you're willing, I'm assuming, you are willing to try something new and interesting. And most of your schools, I would not be surprised, are probably in a position of intellectual leadership in the communities and in the geographic localities that you are based in. So why not look at creating interesting properties that other students might be able to learn from in your schools? Institutionals, I'll come to this, but the last piece, this was something that came up in a discussion that we had with the global CEO of the CFA Institute. And a lot of your students are in fact aspiring to do their CFAs as well. In India, for that matter, the SEBI, the regulator, mandates that every asset management company puts aside some money in what they call an investor protection and education fund. Why not use that as an opportunity to help the AMC achieve its aims of spreading investor education among the grassroots level and using your students as the agents for this change? And that is where I want to tie into using resources that you already have on campus and creating a learning experience for them, your students, being able to help them to learn how they can run and set up businesses while simultaneously learn the theory that they have to, that they are in class to learn. And now this is something that a couple of schools across Asia are working on quite actively, is a very simple concept. They've taken individual subject areas, stretched the reasoning forward to career paths in the industry. So now say for instance something as simple as, at least in my direct experience, the role of an investment banker is something that a lot of your students who are studying finance would aspire to. Why not then create a business opportunity for a couple of students who are clear that they want to be investment bankers and have them set up a small business, an education business around investment banking, where they can help educate others in the areas of in what it takes to be an investment banker through games, simulations, perhaps seminars, workshops, etc. And also, why not the other ideas? Use students from marketing to do the marketing for such enterprises. Use students from HR to do the performance management, benchmarking of such enterprises. And there are a few top-notch schools in Asia whom we are working with very actively to actually implement models like this. And this is something we see has tremendous potential, and I would really want to invite schools in India to try something like this. There is no harm, there is no downside to it. Why not try a model? At best you fail, but that's the nature of business. And maybe just the disappointment of having failed at a business venture would to teach students more life lessons than we can currently expect them to learn. Why not build a case pedagogy model around these experiences that students have on their own when they go out at the grassroots level and try to engage with the community around them, with the customer types that I've highlighted to you previously, to be able to build small businesses on campus. And why not potentially look at that as a profit model for the institute as well, kind of a sharing model where the institute provides infrastructure in return for a stake in the company. So this is just an idea that I wanted to throw out there, to be honest, in 10 minutes, and give you a sense of just some ideas of revenue, in fact, that I thought might be feasibly achievable. If, for instance, for your existing students, you created short-term programs of anywhere between 8 to 15 hours, or long-term, say, month-long programs of different from different subject areas. So whether it's students from outside your institute, Retail customers, that's as I said, people like my mother. Corporates, faculty from outside, so FDPs, etc., with specific focuses in businesses run by students. Just a few ideas of what kind of courses you can run are stuff like this. Obviously, I've taken this from my own experience of what we are currently working on. So the kind of scope is limitless. The kind of education products that can be created are limitless. It is just, these are just some ideas that I hope to suggest to you. And the next level, maybe going beyond just profitability and looking at how we can teach students to do well as they do good. And this is in fact a very interesting conversation I had with Dr. Gautam Sinha, IIM Kashipur, where he was looking at using the infrastructure that they have to be able to benefit the students of Kashipur who currently do not have access to the tools that a lot of other schools can have. And using, for instance, in this particular case, their Bloomberg lab to be able to run certification programs on something as simple as, say, the role of an equity analyst. And having students drive this initiative as a CSR engagement. The no-fee MBA is in fact something that I myself and a couple of entrepreneurs I know have been kind of thinking about, where you could potentially invite students to your campus for no fee to set up their own businesses and run it through the course of 2 years, using the fee that they might have invested in their education to actually build their business, and then eventually, maybe as the Guru Dakshina at the end of this experience, share with the institution, say, a small stake in the company. If it succeeds, there is huge return. If it doesn't, it has been a learning experience and you've contributed to someone else's life. So these are just possibilities. There is a lot that can be done. Engaging the community through financial inclusion ties back into the SEBI and the asset management company idea. So just some ideas I wanted to put out there. There's a lot of very interesting work going on in this space. I would love to obviously chat with you in person if these are ideas you'd like to explore further. But I believe that if we disrupt ourselves as a community, we need not wait for the industry to disrupt us. And disruption is coming. Technology is changing every day. People and mindsets are changing every day. It's just a matter of time. Thank you very much.